Welcome to our debate today on Social Europe. As we near the end of this mandate, did the EU institutions really deliver on tackling the social challenges? What are the main priorities for the next European Parliament that will be forged after the European elections? We will discuss these issues today and many more with our guests, Joao Rodrigues, who was the rapporteur on the European Social Pilar, and Marian Harkin, who is also an expert on these issues, for sure on Brexit, which is another of the concerns that might be related to the social agenda. My name is Jorge Valero. I am in charge of Economy and Jobs section at EURACTIV, and I will be the moderator of this video debate today, organized as part of the media grant that EURACTIV receives from the European Parliament. So my first question for both of you is, let's say, a broad assessment of what this Commission has made on the social agenda, because President Juncker promised a triple-A social Europe when he took over already 4 years ago. So I want to know, on your view, if he really delivered on this social agenda. Okay. We can start with you, Marian.
Look, I think we are starting to deliver, but we are still at the beginning, from my viewpoint. It was good that we launched this initiative called the European Social Pilar 1 year ago. And our purpose was really to reconnect the European Union with citizens, because there is a big gap, and in such a way that we could also update our social standards to meet new challenges. Example, the digital revolution, the new trade agreements, the fact that we also have big differences inside the European Union, big divergences, and we need to get over these divergences. This is dangerous for the future of the European Union. And so we launched this. We launched this with an ambitious agenda, including several updates of European law, including change the direction of a social and economic policy, and also including some stronger financial instruments to support the social pillar. So now we are pushing with all these initiatives, but we are in the very critical moments of negotiation. When it comes, example, the directive on improving working conditions or work-life balance, when it comes the future European budget, where we need to have a stronger social fund. So we need really to complete this task even before European elections.
Marian, what is your assessment?
Well, if I look at what we've been involved in our committee, in employment and social affairs, and I look at specific initiatives. Not all of them are fully agreed, some of them have been, but what do they mean to the ordinary citizen listening here today? Social Europe, AAA, sounds good, but what does it mean to me, to my family? Well, let's look at some of the legislation. The revision of posting of workers now ensures same pay for the same work in the same place. And a lot of citizens were concerned about social dumping, whether real or perceived. At least now that legislation is in place. We have in our committee just agreed on a package on work-life balance, which looks at issues like carers leave. In other words, if somebody needs to care for a family member, that there will be leave, paid leave for that person, as well as family leave, paternity, maternity leave, etc. And also the right to ask for flexible working conditions. Not guaranteed, because we can't do that, but at least we've put that in place. Now, we're still awaiting final agreement with the Council, and I know that there are some barriers, but at least we are trying to put in place practical, everyday assistance to people. Also, in the Parliament, we've just completed a report on transparent and predictable working conditions. Again, they are minimum conditions across the EU where citizens or workers would know what their basic rights were, where they would have minimum hours of work, issues around on-call work, etc. Now, they're absolutely minimum rights, but nonetheless, we are negotiating those at the moment. We have the Accessibility Act, where not just people with disability, but as people get older, and not just older people, but people acquire disabilities, that certain services, at least, are more accessible to them. So there are other issues, and we'll discuss them as we go through. But those are some very specific, concrete issues that the institutions have been working on, where I believe in many of them we have made some reasonable progress.
You mentioned both of you, many issues that has been addressed during this mandate, including the Posted Workers Directive, the work-life balance directive as well. But what are the main outstanding issues that remain unresolved, in your view?
Well, we are going, as Marian referred to, a crucial moment of negotiating between the European Parliament and the Council to complete the revision of these directives. And let me give you an example. One of the most important directives is indeed the one dealing with working conditions. Because we are saying that everybody in employment in Europe, whatever the kind of job, the sector, the region, small or bigger company, everybody needs to count on two very important things. One is, let's say, a decent labor contract with several important rights. The second one is access to social protection all over the life cycle. This is extremely important because what we are saying in this new law is that when a contract is set between employer and worker, we need to identify what is the social protection system covering this worker. Yes. This is extremely important because we want to ensure universal coverage by social protection. And now this is particularly important because you have a lot of people in new kind of jobs. They were already precarious. Now we have a new kind of precarious jobs connected with the gig economy, platform workers, crowd workers. They work for platforms. This is so current among young people. They don't have neither contract nor social protection. And we cannot accept this because this means that we should have a second-class workers and citizens without a contract or without social protection. The Parliament said clearly, no, stop. We want a welfare system for the 21st century, covering everybody. A second example is access to skills. Because we are saying that we need a new right for the 21st century, which is access to secondary education for everybody, because this is the minimal level to have lifelong learning over the life cycle. So this means the following. In the 19th century, the basic right was access to primary school. In the 20th century, it was access to secondary education. From now on, must be access to lifelong learning. And this is a new right we have established with the social pillar.
Marian, of course, the work-life balance and the proposal that the Commission made and the Parliament is discussing to ensure and protect the rights of the platform workers will be a huge step forward in the context of this digital revolution. Yes. But is it that enough? Is it not needed more involvement or a more, let's say, cooperative position or stance from all these companies, Deliveroo, Uber, so on and so forth, in order to ensure that their workers have their basic rights protected?
Yes, I mean, if we look at the figures, for example, for in-work poverty, while if we look overall, we have made slow but steady progress in the last number of years on areas like employment, unemployment, long-term unemployment, etc. But one of the areas that's still very significant is the whole area of in-work poverty. About nearly 10% of the EU working population have less than 60% of what we call the median wage in their own country, which means that they are working, but they're in poverty. And I suppose the question is, what can we do about that? And part of that is driven by younger people in particular, working in the platform economy or working in part-time jobs, in precarious jobs, etc. And my colleague is absolutely right. We have to try to ensure some type of social protection system, a safety net for those people. Now, that is extremely difficult because this is the world of work is changing in front of our eyes. And for legislators to keep up with it, even to fully understand it, and to keep up with it and to try to put protection in place is extremely difficult. But I think that's what we're trying to do here. But the truth is, and I expect you will agree with me, is we are still behind the curve on it. But sometimes that's not because we don't want to do it or that we don't see it as necessary. It's how to find the way to do it that will work and that will make a difference to all of those workers. And just before we came on air, I know it's not connected strictly to what we speak of here, but in another way it is. We spoke about digital taxation. The fact that this isn't just about employment law. This is about all of us, corporations, large entities, etc., paying their fair share of tax so that that money can then be used to provide services for people, to provide social security, social protection for people. So I think Europe is trying in that area also to find solutions. But it's quite a complicated jigsaw, and I think while we're putting in one piece at a time, it's still difficult to see the overall picture and how it'll work.
Yeah. In fact, this is important because this means that we in the European Parliament, we are developing a full agenda to deal with the digital revolution. When it comes better working conditions, when it comes the way to have a proper taxation. Because let me tell you something, these platforms, many of them, they are not just technical devices, they are companies, they are corporations with corporate social responsibility. And therefore, we should update European law to tell these platforms, well, you can operate in the European single market, but we need to comply with our European social model. This is very important. The second thing, Marian referred to this, and indeed this is very important, is the reality of the working poor. Because we still have a big share of population, and particularly in some countries, with extremely low wages. So something is wrong here. Of course, we know that one part of the solution has to do with raising productivity, and with this, raising also wages. But there is also a problem of distribution of the added value, and this must be solved, I believe, with two things. Is support to collective bargaining everywhere, and in some countries this is too weak, particularly the eastern countries, so we need to support social partners to be more active, negotiating wages. And the second thing, I'm in favor of having a minimum wage in all member states, and some member states still don't have. So we need to rebalance this. There is a third reason, which has to do with the Eurozone. And we saw this over the last years, is that the Eurozone is incomplete, and this putting pressure in some countries, and some countries confronted with financial difficulties were forced to go to a very hard way, which is to bring down wages. wages, pensions, and so on. I believe there is another way to overcome differences in the Eurozone, which is to have stronger instruments for investment, for increasing productivity and leveraging wages. This is the right way to go. And not sacrificing people under a very harsh austerity approach.
And let's be optimistic and let's believe that all these dossiers will be complete either during this mandate or early next mandate. What should be the priorities for the next European Commission on the social dimension, in your view, Marian?
Well, I think we've really been speaking about it here, how to ensure that workers in the digital economy, how to ensure that those workers have proper social protection, have some kind of transparent and predictable working conditions. Some people want to work part-time, for example, but for many people, part-time is not something that they want, especially for young people. So I think looking at the digital economy and how we can ensure that workers get their share of the gain. I mean, one of the things we've seen also in the last number of years is that GDP is rising faster than household income. So that tells you something as well, that workers are not sharing in the benefits in a way that they should. And I think also we tend to compare ourselves with the current situation with the crisis and how we're improving. But that's not necessarily a good benchmark because the crisis situation was as low as you can go. And yes, we are improving in so many different areas. But remember, we're starting from a low base. I think from a European perspective, we're looking at the moment at the European Labour Authority and also, I think we need some kind of single social security number or card across the EU. Because one of the issues, and let's face it, we mightn't like it, but let's face it, one of the issues that is coming more and more to the fore is people crossing borders. It doesn't much matter who those people are. Many citizens, or some citizens at least, see that as a threat. So if we have systems in place, whether it's a European Labour Authority, which we are just finalising, we've just finalised it in the Parliament, we're now going to trialogue with the Council. So whether it's that allied with some kind of social security number or card for everybody across the EU, that we can say to citizens, we can show that there is fairness in the system, that there is a safety net for people when they cross borders, that they can bring their whatever contributions they've made with them, but equally that it's fair in the country in which people forget. The French voted down the Constitution some years back. Why? Because of the Polish plumber. That mindset has not fundamentally changed. I see it. I see it in the mobility package that we're dealing with in the Parliament at the moment. People, you know, drivers, etc., crossing borders. So I think until we get to a point where we can say to citizens that European systems work in a way that's transparent and fair, that residual resentment is probably too strong a word, but suspicion of what is happening and how others are benefiting at the expense, let's say, of a particular social security system. And that's right across the EU. Until we can show that European systems can deliver, as I said, transparency and fairness, we're going to have an issue there. And we have started. But I think, and I hope, that the next Commission will complete that journey.
And very briefly, because we have to almost wrap up, Maria, we are discussing social issues where the EU institutions are hand-tied because the competences are not as big as on other dossiers. We are discussing also tax matters where unanimity is needed among member states, and on top of that, the next European Parliament most likely will be more fragmented. So how optimistic can we be on progressing on all these issues, considering all these, let's say, system failures that are there, or let's say flaws when it comes to progressing on social matters?
Well, I think all the recent events in Europe show something very clear, is that if there is a chance for the European project in the next phase, these must be based on a strong social pillar. Otherwise, we cannot really close the gap with citizens. And this is necessary across the board. Yes, we do need to have a European labour authority, because if you have an authority for banks, or you have an authority to monitor the standards for the single market, for the competition, we should also have an authority to make sure that basic social standards are respected everywhere. This is an important development we are pushing for now, but let me recall another one, which is the European budget, because we are in the middle of this negotiation. This is a budget for the next 7 years, and I believe that the social pillar should count on several instruments which are there now. Social fund, the new European investment plan, the globalization fund, and I hope an embryo of budget for the Eurozone. So we need all this to push for the social pillar over the next years.
Very good. As we said, some programs has been achieved, but more is needed. For example, with this European Labour Authority. From my side, just thank our guest for being with us here today, and I hope you enjoyed the debate as well. Thank you very much.